in a song, they got money for wars, but they can't feed the poor. And I believe that's a line from the track Keep Your Head Up. But I do a series called Lyrically Provoked. It's been streamed in 190 countries. I do something similar where I take song lyrics and relate them to life. But make sure you check that out. But I like what Elon's doing here because you realize that if billionaires thought that they could solve world hunger, at least this crisis, for $6 billion, they would have gotten together, like a bunch of friends at a poker game, threw the money in the pot, and got this thing fixed. The great PR play by Elon, obviously. If they write anything about him, it's not going to be the engineer, the entrepreneur, the technologist. What they're going to write about him in the business books is what a PR master he was. If you look at all the things he's done, A, to build profile, B, to get profile for his companies, C, for misdirection. Anytime you see something like this going on, I always wonder, is there something else going on that he's trying to kind of brush under the rug? Or are we waiting for some bad information about Tesla or SpaceX or something somewhere? But just to kind of call out the UN, because if you look at how corrupt everything is, politicians, our government, NGOs, nonprofits, government, NGOs, they can keep repeating it over and over and over again. Everyone along the way that's actually not kind of producing something, if you're not creating something, if you're not delivering a service, if you're not manufacturing, if you're not creating something in this world of value, there's a high chance you're corrupt. And I think that's what happens with our government, the nonprofits, and everyone that's trying to save the world. And there's a lot of good that gets done, but the amount of corruption that is in it is mind-blowing. You got to look back sometimes and you look at how so many of these people end up getting rich, and it's like, well, how do you... Well, I got to imagine a lot of shady stuff goes on. So you think about, the guy from the UN's out here like a digital panhandler, right? That's what it comes down to now. Everyone's a digital panhandler. They're banging their cup in your DMs looking for cash. Man, that's what you do now. You get on Twitter and instead of just calling up Elon and calling up some people and trying to raise some money, saying, hey, throw a couple $100 million. Now let's just go on and try to shame people. I'm going to shame you. I'm going to wealth shame you on Twitter and try to get some money from you. And the thing is most of the content that I see written about rich people, even the people in real life, when you hear people talk negatively about rich people, they actually have never been around anyone rich. They don't even know firsthand. They read a bunch of negative stuff online, from their parents, from their teachers, and that's it. And the thing is, most of the wealthy people I know don't have an issue opening their checkbook to try to solve problems. In this case, I feel like between Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos, and this is just naming billionaires in America, if they thought that they could just send the UN $6 billion and it would get spent correctly and it would solve the issue, they would do it. But they know it's not going to fix it. This is why Elon's calling for, open accounting. Obviously, he feels the money wouldn't get spent right. And there's a lot of other issues. I would say most of my money goes to two things when it comes to charities. One is feeding people. I talk about this because, I started as a child. And not because I had to, it's just because my mother wasn't around. But I know what it's like to what it's like to go without food for days, and it's not a good goddamn feeling. So my thing I've always donated the most money to has been food and helping feeding people. But I've also learned that there's so much help between the state and the government and all these other programs. It's actually pretty hard to starve if you have a driver's license or even just a state ID and an address where you can get benefits or welfare benefits. Unless you're a terrible parent, it's actually hard to starve in this country. There's a lot of help out there. And if you can't do that between charities and soup kitchens and food pantries and churches, and some people still get left behind, but as I did more research, even reflecting back on what I went through as a child, there's a lot of help out there. And, I had family that lived on welfare and got, food stamps and all that stuff. I realize it's unless you are really screwing stuff up or you're really like at a point where you're homeless, it's hard to starve in this country. There's a lot of help out there. But just looking at what's going on here, I think will the UN call Elon's bluff? Is Elon calling their bluff? I don't know. I just believe that there's so many wealthy people in this world that if they could just solve the food issue, this crisis right now for 42 million people, that it would get done. But they just don't want to give the money to the UN because it seems like they don't believe it would get spent in the appropriate place. And another charity I work with is Toys for Tots. Every year we run one of the biggest donation and volunteer programs in the state of Michigan. We're always trying to get as many toys as possible, but I like the idea that when I donate a toy, it's not like you donate $1 and then they take like 40% of your dollar and it goes to administrative costs. If you donate a toy, it ends up in a kid's hands and they don't like trim off 20, 30, 40% of that toy. And you look at the amount of, military people that are helping out during the program, those are things I want to, I like to get behind anyways. But I always say go do your research because a lot of these charities, man, there's like Charity Watch or something. There's like one of those websites you can go check out. You can start doing some research. But I think you're gonna see more and more billionaires pushing back in this way as they start to do this like wealth tax. And I think the issue is if wealthy people. Who was that like greedy guy on The Simpsons? I never really watched The Simpsons, but like I think everyone believes that rich people are like that dude. And I say most of the people I know with a lot of money are fairly generous people. And that's where I go like, what you read on the internet is not true. Like, I'm sure there's some really cheap ass billionaires out there and they're terrible people. But when it comes to opening up checkbooks to solve problems, as long as the money's going to get spent in the appropriate places, most people I know will do that. So that's where I kind of come down to with the billionaire tax and what's going on right now. They know that the government collecting the money, it's probably not going to go anywhere good. And I think a lot of people wouldn't care if they had to pay more taxes. But, you got half the public out there who doesn't pay a tremendous amount of tax saying that everyone else needs to pay more tax. But once you get in a position where you start paying a boatload of tax and then you try to figure out where the hell the money's going, it bothers you. But if you never had to spend that kind of money on taxes, then it's never going to bother you. Of course, you're going to say everyone else pay more tax. So a lot of fundamental issue is, you look at what our government's doing now with another, couple $1 trillion they want to spend. How much of that money is actually going to go do the shit that it's supposed to do? I think that's what Elon's saying here with the $6 billion. It's like, I don't think people mind writing the checks. I think they mind writing the checks when like a bunch of it's going to get siphoned off. It's going to get blown. It's not going to fix the actual problem. I think we have that issue in the state of Michigan here. Don't quote me on that, but like we used to like get a fishing license or an ORV license and snowmobile stuff, and it would like that money would go back into fixing the snowmobile trails and going into fixing the ATV trails to go into stocking the lakes with fish. And I think part of that money, or a lot of that money, ends up in the general fund now. And it just, where does it go? The money never seems to go where it's supposed to go. But, when I started this episode off, I said, the Tupac song from Keep Your Head Up. They got money for wars, but they can't feed the poor. We can print money. We can print like $1 trillion to go to war, but we can't come up with $6 billion to solve hunger. And then, they're going to say, well, American taxpayers don't want to spend their hard-earned money. It's like, well, hey, you don't even give me a choice, right? The government sends money all over the world, and they never ask me if they can do that. They tax the hell out of us, and then they send the money all over the place. But are you telling me like the 25, even 50th, let's just say 25, of the wealthiest countries in the world, if they knew they could solve this hunger crisis for $6 billion, hey, let's all throw in a couple $100 million. You know, the big dogs throw in maybe 500 million or a billion. If all those countries knew that we could just solve this problem, they would just do it, hand the money over to the UN, and we could solve this problem. You know why it's not done? Because they know it won't solve the goddamn problem. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out. I think, in the next decade, we're going to see more and more of this stuff as we try to, attack the billionaires, which is fine. If they're not paying taxes, they got to pay taxes. That's got to get fixed. But you think that going around and doing your digital panhandling and banging your cup, you're not going to fix these issues because we have corruption issues. When you look at how much tax revenue is collected even in this country, and then you're wondering why your roads got potholes, you got to start asking questions. There's corruption, we're inefficient, we waste money, we blow money, we can't manage projects. This is just Elon fighting back and calling people on their own bullshit. I'm curious to see what happens. I think push come to shove, they're not going to do the open accounting, and maybe they feel like they have to now. So maybe they will take the $6 billion and fix and go try to solve the problem. But I don't know. It's just one of those things that if I think a bulk of people, I don't even want to say that. A lot of people don't understand how much goddamn money's collected. Why are our schools still underfunded? You still hear about schools where the parents got to bring in a boatload of supplies. Our roads aren't fixed. Like, we have all this issue, and I think everyone seems to think that it's a revenue issue, like a tax issue, that we don't have enough money to spend. It's like, no, just the problem is we spent a whole lot of money in the past in the wrong places, or we don't even know where it went. Money never seems to go where it's supposed to go. We always got money for shit we don't need. We never seem to have money for the stuff we do need. But between wealthy countries and billionaires, if they thought that they could solve a world hunger crisis right now, and this sounds bad, but $6 billion is not a lot of money anymore. We just printed how many trillions of dollars during COVID? We're trying to do a $1.7 trillion bill right now, but it's got everything under the sun in it. What is $6 billion across a handful of countries? It's not a lot of money, but it's not getting done because people probably don't believe that the money's going to go where it's supposed to. So I don't know. Like I said, we always got money for the shit that we don't need, and we never have the money for the stuff we do need. But if you have any thoughts on this, drop a comment below. I'd be curious to see what you have to say. Make sure you check out my show, Lyrically Provoked, on Spotify and iTunes. I won't disappoint you, I promise. Anyways, until then, I'm going to catch you on the next one.